In this video, we're going to look at the similarities and differences between animal and plant cells. By the end of the session, you should be able to identify animal and plant cells from their different structures. You should be able to describe the structure and function of different plant cell organelles, and you should be able to compare different structures in plant, animal, fungi, and algae cells. So first of all, a little quiz for you. Is this a plant or an animal cell? So is this a plant or an animal? It's an animal cell. How did you know? Well, you might have said it has no chloroplasts. However, this cell has no chloroplasts. So is it a plant or an animal cell? It's a plant cell. How did you know? Well, it has a cellulose cell wall and it has a permanent vacuole. However, you will have identified it as a root hair cell, so that cell that is adapted to be able to take ions from the soil into the plant and is therefore underground. As it is underground, there is no light for photosynthesis, and so it does not have chloroplasts because it cannot carry out photosynthesis where there is no light. It is adapted for that different role of taking up ions by active transport from the soil. So, what are the similarities and differences between an animal and a plant cell? We'll start with the similarities. Both cells have a cell or a plasma membrane which allows for selective entry and exit of substances inside and outside of the cell. Even though it's not shown on the plant cell diagrams, both cells have lysosomes which contain those hydrolytic enzymes to break down macromolecules, and cytoplasm. Both cells have mitochondria, as both cells carry out aerobic respiration. Both cells have ribosomes, some of which are attached to the rough endoplasmic reticulum for protein synthesis, and both cells therefore have rough endoplasmic reticulum, which again is involved in protein synthesis. Animal cells all have centrioles, which are needed for mitosis and cell division. Some plant cells have centrioles for cell division, other plants do not have centrioles. However, some plants do, so that it can be common between animals and some plant cells. Both cells have a nucleus, and although it's not shown on the plant cell diagram, that nucleus is broken down into your nuclear membrane, your nucleolus, where you have synthesis of ribosomes, the chromatin, that genetic information, your nuclear pore, which allows things to leave a nucleus, such as mRNA, and nucleoplasm, which you said is that cytoplasm-like substance that's found in your nucleus. Both cells have smooth endoplasmic reticulum for lipid synthesis, and both cells have Golgi bodies, which are needed for packaging and modifying proteins. The plant cell and the animal cell can have a vacuole. However, I've put them in different colours because the vacuole in an animal cell is not permanent. They come and go as and when they are needed, and they are very small. Whereas in a plant cell, you have that large, permanent, central vacuole, which is always there. And we'll go through why you have a vacuole in a moment. Plants also have a cellulose cell wall to support the cell. They have chloroplasts, which are our site of photosynthesis. And they also have ameloplasts, which you will know as starch grains, and that's where they store the starch. So what are the functions of all these organelles in animal and plant cells? We went through these in one of the videos on animal and plant cells, but I will quickly review them for you again. So the nucleus contains hereditary material, DNA, and it controls your cell activities such as transcription and mitosis via DNA replication. Your nucleolus is the site of the production and assembly of ribosome components. Your rough endoplasmic reticulum is studied with ribosomes and is involved in the synthesis and transport of proteins destined for secretion. The smooth endoplasmic reticulum is involved in the synthesis and transport of lipids and steroids, as well as the metabolism of carbohydrates. The Golgi operation is that assembly of vesicles and folded membranes involved in the sorting, storing, and modification of secretory products. Ribosomes are responsible for polypeptide synthesis. They are made of ribosomal RNA, and eukaryotic ribosomes are larger than prokaryotes. They are 80S in eukaryotes. Mitochondria is at the site of aerobic respiration, producing the chemical ATP, which provides energy for the cell. Lysosomes are the site of hydrolysis, digestion, breakdown of macromolecules. Chloroplasts are the site of photosynthesis. The plasma membrane is a semi-permeable barrier that controls the entry and exit of substances. Centrioles, which are found in some plant cells and animal cells, are a microtubule organizing center which make the spindle fibers for cell division. And cytoplasm, that fluid portion of your cell where your chemical reactions happen. Of all these organelles in the list, there is only one which is specific to plants, and that is chloroplasts. So it should show you that most organelles are similar within animal and plant cells. However, plants do have a few differences. One of these is chloroplasts, and they also have a permanent vacuole. So the features of a permanent vacuole. In a plant cell, the vacuole is surrounded by a single membrane called a tonoplast. So the black line around the large central vacuole is called a tonoplast. That is the membrane that surrounds your vacuole. Inside the vacuole, you will find a solution of mineral salts, sugars, amino acids, waste products, and some pigments known as anthocyanins. So why does a vacuole contain all these things? What is the function of it? The vacuole has a number of functions. They support herbaceous plants by making cells turgid. Herbaceous plants are plants that do not have a woody stem. So for example, a daisy or any herbs you may grow, such as, for example, basil or thyme. They also store sugars and amino acids as a temporary food store, and the pigments may colour petals to attract pollinating insects for reproduction. Cell walls on plant cells are made of cellulose, and the function of the cell wall is to provide mechanical strength to prevent the cell bursting when under pressure from osmotic entry of water, to give mechanical strength to the plant as a whole and keep it upright, and to allow water to pass along it to contribute to the movement of water through a plant. So water can move along the cell wall to make sure that water can move from the roots to the stem to the leaf. Cell walls, however, are not only found in plant cells, other organisms have cell walls too. For example, algae has a cell wall which is made of either cellulose, glycoproteins, or a mixture of both. Whereas fungi has a cell wall made of nitrogen-containing polysaccharide chitin. What I mean by polysaccharide is a long chain of sugar. So for example, starch is an example of a polysaccharide because it is a long chain of glucose. So by the end of this video, you should now know how to identify animal and plant cells and the structures within them. You should be able to describe the structure and function of different plant cell organelles, and you should be able to compare different structures in plant, animal, fungi, and algae cells. If you want any more information, please do refer to the video bank on the Winstanley YouTube site.